Okay.
It's fucking cool to see that we haven't lost everything, you know, like there's a way to go back. And as I continue to go and try to like eventually get into breeding, knowing that we have those foundations to go back will be fucking awesome, dude.
It's going to be dope, dude. I that's another kind of key component, I think, to what I think, cornerstone to what I think is important for, what I'm doing, what everyone's doing, what I think, and what I think everyone should start to do is because I think it's important for the future is the preservation aspect to it, like just the storytelling preservation, the preservation of the genetics, the preservation of these different people. We have lost countless stories. Like there's probably tons of people out there, bro, that are critical in the history of like modern cannabis development. But, I think that, we've definitely lost some of those stories, but hopefully we can, there's also a lot of OGs out there that are just their whole life they've been taught to stay away from the camera, don't ever talk about anything. So everything in their life for 50 years, 40 years, they're like, and now because of legalization, they've been told to like, now we got to switch it. Yeah. Now it's actually
now you have to go talk about yourself.
Yeah, it's to survive. It's hard though. Imagine your whole, I'm sure.
Dude, some of those old cats that I know, like, that's exactly it. You had to get, like, it felt like getting a lottery ticket to be able to go to their fucking garage. and it's just like seeing what they're working on versus, buying a QP from them, or they'd come and drop shit off and you're like, dude, this is insane. Where does this come from? Willy Wonka's factory? And like, they don't talk about they half the time. The only way you knew that they grew it was because you could tell that it hadn't been squashed in a turkey bag. It came straight from a destock bin, got trimmed and went into a jar and right into your hands. And that's like, learning to grow and figuring out that that's what that meant was pretty cool, as far as, oh yeah, this didn't get crushed and sent from Cali. It's not vacuum sealed. It's phenomenally crystally, and it's like every time that human hands touch it, you lose some of that. So
absolutely,
when you can get as many steps close to it as you can, that was the joy back in the day. And these guys did it because they love it, but also, back in the day, you could have 4 or 5, 6 lights and be fucking rich.
No. It's crazy how things
have changed. I wish I would have started like 10 years earlier.
I know.
This podcast is brought to you by CannaGenesis, innovators of flash frozen cured technology, inventors of space weed, and committed to studying the science of cannabis.
I know, bro. Well, let's. So I started recording a little bit ago. Let's jump into it. So this is episode 1 of the CannaGenesis Podcast, featuring my man Nick from HoneyDew. Thanks for joining us, by the way. I really appreciate it. Absolutely. But yeah, that's a good segue into, I guess, let's start at the beginning, because I remember first meeting you way back when through Eric. You had a little bit of shorter hair. I love the flow. I love the flow now. The flow is dope. I love it.
Thanks, man.
And so yeah, let's start out at the beginning with your relationship with cannabis and when did it all start?
Yeah, well, I started out smoking. I didn't really smoke until I was about 21, moved to Bellingham, went to Western. And
where are you from originally?
I'm from Kent, down by Seattle.
Oh, dope. Hell yeah.
Yeah, so I was a good kid. I was an honor roll kid, a fucking AP student, and came to Bellingham, and there's this set of dorms it's called the Ridge, and
oh yeah,
I think that's the first time I ever smoked weed. And then my sister smoked, and I smoked with her a couple times and didn't really get high. I didn't really understand what it was about, and eventually, the homies kind of got me into it, I guess, and it just started from there. And it was something where I'd always been fascinated with it and with psychedelic substances in general, and the idea that you can kind of change your consciousness and see different perspectives in the world. And I think that's what really got me into it. And then I had a couple plants in a closet in a college house that I lived in, and I got spider mites and didn't know what to do, and they got cobwebbed up, and I was like, dude, this is hard. It's not like growing a weed. It's, you're going to be putting this in your body. You have to figure out, like, how do I treat these things to be able to get good stuff out of it? And that really started my journey there.
Yeah. What do you, if you don't mind me asking, what house was it? Like, what street was it on? That first house, roughly? Because I lived on High Street, Garden Street.
No, I was on Alabama.
Alabama. So on like by Iron Street, right? Or
yeah, it was funny.
Yorktown?
It was kind of down by Alabama and Woburn.
Okay,
in the hood, and I had no idea going, like, when we signed up for that house, I didn't really sell weed at all, let alone grow weed. And by the time that we left, it was like pounds and pounds a week. And it was just something where I had no idea going into it, but coming out of it, I was like, wow, it's really nice that no one can tell which apartment you're going into when you park. And it was just, we had a lot of foot traffic all the time, and it just worked out really well. And it was a blast. I actually went from the closet to the third bedroom, and we set up like a little hydro system. And of course the landlord wanted to come inspect, like, as soon as we got it set up. And I had like black plastic up on all the walls, just stapled to the wall. We had a hole in the closet for ventilation and shit. And they came in and they were just like, what the fuck is going on here? Why are there staples and pieces of plastic in the wall everywhere? And I'm like, I'm a photographer, and I had a black photography room set up so I could develop photos.
I've heard some stories of like different people, like when they're like their landlord comes, because that's like kind of one of the like quintessential growers issues is like they're renting a place, and then like it's always like right after they set it all up, somebody comes in, and then but I've had friends of mine in the past, like friends get extorted by landlords, like saying, hey, we're gonna go to the cops unless you give us this amount of money, which is crazy. I mean, all types of things, but that's wild, bro. 100%. That's dope, dude. So, and what year was this roughly? What?
Is it chill if I smoke on here?
Yeah, you can smoke for sure. I can't. I'm in a conference room.
Cool.
I'm down in Portland right now, but
no worries. I didn't want to mess with your YouTube views or whatever.
You're good. You're good. Yeah. No, it's fun. It's fun.
Cool. Well, yeah, I think the main, like, I was a musician too, so I've been a musician my whole life. My mom was a professional musician. She got all of us into music, and I played cello, so I was in orchestra, and that's awesome. I used to like just get fucking blazed and go into the symphony practice just reeking, and like, I don't know what they thought, but that's what was up. And it's the transition from playing music that's on a piece of paper to playing with the homies and making music was really, really aided by weed. And that's what really opened my eyes to it. Like, I had a friend that came over to buy a bag, and he was like, hey man, get your cello out. Let's fucking jam. And I was just like, okay. And I got it out. I'm like, okay, what chords are we playing? What's the progression? What should we do? And he's like, no, whoa, man. Like, here, hit this. I'm going to play some sounds that I think sound cool. And I just want you to try and make some sounds that you think sound cool with it. And and cannabis just opened my mind to being able to improvise and create music, and started a whole journey where, we started a band, we played all around the state, we did a couple little tours, and I originally started Cascadia back in the day so that I could one day have more time to play music. So I started a weed business to have more time to be a musician, and anyone that started a business knows that's not really how that goes.
Eventually it will, but it takes some time, I think, initially. But that's amazing. No, I couldn't agree more with you too. Like, I mean, cannabis, any psychedelics, anything that puts you in it. Like, I love consuming cannabis, and I used to do a lot more psychedelics back in the day, but I still dabble with, some stuff here and there. But it puts your mind in a different frame, and then it also unlocks all these things like creativity, like you were saying, and the fact that cannabis led to you like going from playing music with to creating your own music, right?
Yeah,
I love
yeah.
that.
I think one of my favorite things about psychedelics is like you don't need to be doing them constantly to have that perspective. Once you've opened that door, or once you've opened that window and climbed out it, you can always stand in the house and look out that window and have that perspective. So I mean, I'm right there with you. I really like where my consciousness is at right now, and it's not really something I do all the time anymore, but it's just you gain a lot of perspective on the world. And I think it would be great if we could get some politicians to sit down and take some psychedelics and get reflective. I think it put the world on a good path.
100%. Yeah. I could not agree more. I mean, it's I'm glad that it's all starting to change, right? Slowly but surely. Okay. So what year roughly was the start of Cascadia?
So yeah, I started Cascadia in 2015, and it was the first business to buy into a pre-existing license and change the name. So it was something where I found it. I graduated from Western in 2014. I went through a gnarly breakup, and I was like, what am I going to do with my life? That just out of college vibe. And I found a tier 2 license on Craigslist. And I went and took a look, and she was like, yeah, we already have a buyer lined up, and I'll let you know if anything changes. And then a couple months later, she called me crying and was like, they're going to turn the power off, and do you want to come see it? And I was like, okay, well, this is a lot bigger of a facility than I was thinking about. I had one buddy in mind. That was my friend that grew the best weed in Bellingham that I had consistently. And it ended up, I pulled together the guy that grew the best weed consistently and the guy that grew the most weed consistently. And our mutual friend, Dave. And that's how we ended up.
Super Dave?
What?
Super Dave?
No, DJ Dave.
You know Super Dave, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know like the yeah. I know Super Dave from back in the day, but yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
From Bellingham.
Yeah, we were kids, like I was 27 when we started Cascadia. Wow. And we got just into this thing, and it was so much more involved than what we thought going in. You thought you just grow the weed and it sells and it's easy and you get to go buy a boat. I thought for sure I'd have all my student loans paid off. And at the time, I really wanted a Tesla. And I was just like, dude, I'm going to have all my student loans paid off. I'm going to be driving a Tesla in a year. And then I'm going to be back on tour twice a year. And this is going to be great. But I think that's really where the journey started. That just looking back on that time, it was so different in Washington as well. Like people were so excited in the industry as the business owners, and it was so new and so fresh that everyone had just started their businesses a couple of years ago. And then all of a sudden it went from, oh, we're selling weed for crazy amounts of money and everything's great and it's all sold, to, oh shit, there's way too much. And it started getting hard. And now we're 10 years in, and a lot of my friends in the industry have dropped off over the years. There's just, you get tired and you're scraping by, and you've put everything that you have into it, and you gave it a decade of your life, and it just isn't working out, and you're still super broke, and you're still working 7 days a week. You can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do anything. You get a lot of pressure when you do that for so many years. It's like, dude, I know you love weed, but like, we're your family or your partner, or like, you really got to be all in to be able to try and make it, especially in Washington with the systems that we have set up.
100%. Yeah, you got to have that passion for sure. And you're absolutely right. I mean, this right here is, and I've traveled a lot of places in the country, and I analyze different markets all the time, and I see the rate. This is by far the hardest market in the country, maybe the world, for growers to succeed, in my mind.
Yeah,
which is crazy. But
I would love to go somewhere where I could have I'd love to have a little club where we could do music or stand-up comedy and be able to sell direct to consumer and tell them about our strains. And just, as a musician, like to be able to provide a space where you could have alcohol on one side of the railing and cannabis on the other side of the railing. I don't know why we don't have that. California just put out at their state fair. Like you could go and get some treats.
I was in Houston. I was in Houston, and sorry to interrupt. I was in real quick. I was in Houston, and I went to this place called Wild, and it was this super legit. It looked like it was a really nice place, but it was kind of a rectangle to building. So one half was the retail store, and the other half was like a bar / cafe, and then they had an outdoor area as well. And people would come and like, bro, that's in Houston, Texas, where it's not even technically legal.
That's so crazy.
And I'm just like, holy, like this. It's just like it just frustrates me because it's like, man, there's so many amazing people that dedicated their lives to cannabis, and people that are from Washington State that help build a lot of the market around the country that is here now.
Did you grow up in Washington too?
Yeah, I grew up in Seattle, so I grew up.
And it's like, this is where my family is. This is where my friends are. This is the place that I'm passionate about, and I just want it to thrive. It's like I always will have my bread and butter in Washington, and it needs to be. That's what we've been focusing on the last few years, is just getting the foundation set with HoneyDew. But like, if someone came to me with a bucket of money and was like, hey, let's expand, I'd be like, not here, bro. We're going to go to New Mexico, or we're going to go to somewhere where we can actually speak to what the culture is and what we want to do, and not have a 37% tax.
It's crazy.
The national average is like 11 or 12%.
Yeah, it's a regular tax. It's a normal fair tax, like 30, and it's just like you're trying. It's like you're trying to strangle these companies out of existence. It's egregious, dude. It's egregious.
My perspective is that it's the LCB only has so much enforcement budget, so it's hard for them to have 12 officers and inspect 1,000 businesses every year. It would be a lot easier for them to have 4 or 5 grows that they have to keep up with, and the stores are what bring them the revenue. So, you get all your excise tax from the stores, so they don't need more than enough grows to fill the stores.
I'd never heard that before. Now that you say it like that, I never heard it that way. That's what they want. You're probably right. I mean, you're definitely right. Yeah, because well,
to their benefit, I mean, they were kind of focused on enforcement for probably 2015 to like 2019-ish, 2018, 2019. But they really switched to an education standpoint, and you had all these old cats that were like, oh, don't answer the phone, close all the blinds, like just don't let them in, don't talk to them. And I took the complete opposite approach. I got to know my LCB officer, and I wasn't the guy hitting him up, bugging him about every little thing. But I mean, anytime he showed up, it's like, yeah, come on in, Dan. Like, here's this, here's that. Yep, of course, everything has barcodes, everything's tagged. We do things proper. And that's, I think, one of the biggest differences is when you communicate with the people, you can build the trust. And we're not trying to do anything shady. We just want our chance at the American dream. We just want to do what we love. And like, when it went legal, I had friends coming out of the woodwork to be like, where do I go? What brand do I buy? And I was like, dude, I have no idea. And that was kind of one of the reasons why I started in the first place, was to be able to help the same friends that I had been, to be able to get what was medicine to a lot of them, like I wanted to start a dispensary in 2008-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And
So were you in medical? Because like when you brought up, like when you found that on Craigslist, like for folks that aren't aware, Craigslist is like Washington State's Weed Maps equivalent, or it was at one point when it comes to the medical markets kind of, but it also was like Weed Maps mixed with like Craigslist was the hub for all that. But it seems like, so you were in medical, obviously.
Yeah, I did medical for years. I had a 20-ton press in 2015. Wow. Squishing 7-gram bags at night when we started Cascadia, and I was selling it to the dispensaries as they were like waving out the BHO. And that was how I made ends meet for the first little while when we were starting Cascadia. Pretty rad. Everyone was using hair straighteners and I was getting a gram of press. But like back in 2008, the dispensaries were in full swing, and that was when I think I first got a card in like 2007 maybe. Wow. And my dad had cancer, and so I was like, Dad, I want to start a dispensary. I think that this could really like be a good thing and make money for our family, and I think, you know, it's what I like doing. And he was like, Nick, let me see that little piece of paper that says that you can have weed. And then he's a Boeing engineer, so he reads through it and he's like, this says that after you're arrested, you can use that as a defense. And I was like, okay. He's like, that's fucking dumb. You should go finish your degree. And so it was like I went to the dispensary and would bring him edibles and stuff, and he would never touch it because like his dad was a Marine. He was a Boeing engineer. It was illegal, and that was bad. And like, if the legality had changed sooner, I think his standpoints would have changed, but it was definitely not a welcome thing in my household. And it was, you know, like it's amazing to see how much things have changed. You know, if you were a 18-year-old today, you've never known like maybe like a 14-year-old, but it's been legal since and on sale since like 2014 and a half. So yeah, if you were 3 or 4 years old when that happened, you've never had a conscious experience of a world where weed was illegal. And to have like my aunts and uncles coming out of the woodwork as they're aging and looking to me for advice and guidance on like CBD products and gummies, and you know, hey, I broke my hip and I don't want to take these pills. You know, like I've just been drinking Crown Royal too much. What you got anything that could help me? And, you know, to have family do that, and that's like what it's all about. It's just breaking those barriers, destroying the stigma, and helping people learn that this can be a beneficial thing in your life, or it can be a way to have fun. It can be a way to open your mind. But it doesn't need to be a thing that is going to get you in jail, and like it's not the same as heroin and meth. It's taken a decade to even get the stigma to really start to break down to that point.
100%. It's so true. That's one of the I do a series called the Trap Tree series, but it's really a series of just the history of different smugglers and different things. Because you're right. I mean, that's one of the key things about preservation is, I think, you know, the kids coming up nowadays, or just generations from now, I think they need to realize that they're like real because I mean, there's so many, there's sacrifices on sacrifices getting stacked on top of each other throughout the last, what is it, like 70, 80 years since they made it, you know, like, so, you know, it's like, it's always important to honor those people and realize that there were people that died. I mean, I have friends that have been killed. It's like no, it's crazy when you put it in that mindset, and I think it's super important for people to really understand the gravity of what was fought for. And it's
you've met way more people than I have as far as OGs in our industry, but isn't it so much fun when you meet someone that's in their 70s and their eyes light up when they see the plant still, and it's just like that love that they have inside hasn't wavered in decades and decades and decades. And I think that speaks a lot to how special the plant is and what it gives to people in their life, to a point where they would risk going to jail for the rest of their life just to have it.
It's wild. It's a magical plant. There's so many applications for it, so many different things it can, problems it can solve. You're absolutely right. And I know that, that flicker of just like, I know exactly what you're talking about. I've interviewed some different folks that are, much older now. And it's a beautiful thing. I mean, that passion never, especially, the thing that's kind of, we're kind of moving into this era now of commercialization. And unfortunately, I think a lot of those people that would have, because I mean, like, there's the era of like, right, there's outlaw, obviously, kind of, but there's also the movement of legalization and the different, people like Todd McCormick, right? People like all these people that are fighting for legalization, like like yourself, right? I mean, and I think that we're now moving into this commercialization era where a lot of the activists, right, are kind of moving. I mean, they're not going into cannabis, obviously, because there's not maybe as much need for it. But I hope that we still attract that passion to the industry. And I think that'll happen through the cultivation, through the growing sectors and stuff. And home grow is a key component to that. And I'm a big advocate for home grow because I think that's the pipeline for attracting more talent to the culture, to the industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that there's people that have experiences with weed and it sparked something in them and they're like, holy shit, this is different than any like food. It's different than tobacco. It's different than alcohol. It's different than other drugs. It's something that it just sucks you in. And I definitely think the era of the commercialization is here and realistically has been here for probably 5 or 6 years, hardcore. And I would like to think that as we go, the supply and demand, and we start to come out of this emerging market mindset and into a more mature market where the commercialization exists, but Budweiser exists, and that doesn't stop all of these craft brews. Like in Bellingham, we have like fucking 30 breweries. It's crazy. And everyone has their little niche and they do it because they're passionate about it. It's not like a get rich quick scheme. It's not I want to fucking fly on private planes. I want to do this because I love it and I'm going to do it. I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to get better at it. And that's something where, a lot of industries don't have that, like my homies that I hung out with in college and they ended up going to Boeing and working in supply chain. Like they just kind of clock in, clock out, you move the bits, you move the bobs, and they go home and do the things that they're passionate about. Like my old roommate, I was like, are you stoked with what you're doing? And he's like, dude, I'm stoked. I work my 40 hours. I go home. I live my life. And that's like, I would never want to do what you do. That sounds terrible, bro. Like you never stop working. And I'm just like, dude, I could not do what you do. Like when I was a Costco guy in my previous life. And when I would be on the clock at Costco, I'd be dreaming about new band names or new strain names or new ways to tweak things. And it's just, I think that it pulls these movers and shakers in a way that there's always going to be passion in the industry. I don't see them being able to kill it off. And to your point, the home grow is really where that starts. Being able to grow heirloom tomatoes in your backyard. Why shouldn't you be able to grow a few plants in your backyard?
100%. That's one thing too. Like, yeah. And I know what you're talking. Like I'd be working construction, right? And I would just in my brain, I'm like doing the work, but in my mind, I'm like, I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do I figuring, like I'm thinking about my passions. And so there's some people, like you're right, like it's those people that like yourself that it's hard for them to do those kind of, like they're just constantly thinking about wanting to do their passion full time, right? But no, yeah. But going back to the home grow, I mean, it's crazy that home grow here in Washington State is not allowed because. And it's literally, it's going to minimally affect the I mean, if people want to do home grow, they can do home grow, right? Like so I had a medical card back in I got mine in 2013. And so I participated in the very end of the medical market there, but I finally renewed it. I finally got a new one about 7-8 months or like 9 months ago, 10 months ago, maybe. So because, and the only reason why I got it wasn't for like the products, because they allow for a discount on the products, which is finally they allowed for that, which is great. But I did it for the cultivation, because you're allowed to actually do home grow here if you have a medical card.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason why. But it's like, you know, some people can't either afford that amount of money, or they just don't know how to do it, or they're just freaked out, you know. And it's just
have you started growing yet?
Yeah. We're in our flowering stage right now. We're about probably like 3 or 4 weeks out.
Nice, dude. What strains are you doing?
So we're working with in-house genetics. We got a bunch. We got so I got 3 different, 2 other buddies that have medical licenses too. So we stacked them together and made a little collective. So we've got about a little under 60 plants, which is like pretty substantial. I mean, like in home grow, it's like, you know, it's kind of
enough.
That's enough, yeah. So that's cool.
Dude, that's rad.
But yeah, we're going like trying to think of the different strains. We got so many, honestly. Man, I need to get the list, honestly.
Which one are you the most excited about?
I would say, I think we got like a couple different phenos of, obviously the gelato phenos are interesting, but I don't know, like I think we actually got like an old school green crack, I'm pretty sure. One of the old school sativas that are, because, you know, this is another thing to the era of like, I mean, kids growing up now, they're going to think that purple weed is the norm, which is mind, right? Because,
isn't that crazy?
Isn't that crazy? Like, so,
yeah.
And everything.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Isn't that
Do you remember the first time you saw purple weed?
Just blew my mind. Like,
yeah, I was like, oh, this can't be healthy. I was like,
exactly. Yeah.
What did they put on this? You know, because it's some shit from some guy that drove it up from somewhere else. And like, what even is that? Did they spray it? Like, what?
100%. The radio. The first strain I remember was like, it was like the one that really, like, I mean, obviously there's the GDPs and stuff like that, but like the one that was like it was like this neon bright, almost, it was like, we call it radioactive perp. I don't know where it was from. One
like
of like
magenta.
Yeah, magenta, but it wasn't like a magenta, like a CBD high strain. You know, like there's some of those ones that are higher, like they look like reddish almost. That you've tried some of the. I've had some different types of strains that have were like red almost. The like CBDs, but they're like, and they don't look particularly good from a bag feel standpoint, and they're not. I don't think they're that high really, even in THC percentage, right? Which just shows you. But every time I'd smoke it, I remember I kind of got stuck with like 10 pounds of it back in the day when I purchased it. And I remember just like every single time though I would smoke it, I'd be like, this is the craziest high ever. It's wild. It showed me on that. But
I used to get this one called Black Gold from Oregon, and like it was so crazy that I still get friends hitting me up like, dude, when are you gonna bring that back? And they got raided and the moms got killed, so it doesn't exist anymore. But it was like black weed with bright orange hairs. And I've been trying to hunt some things that could kind of harken back to that type of bag appeal and look and flavor. And so I'm running a couple of things from Soulfire Seeds right now that kind of have that. He's got some that kind of have that look, but I'm curious what it's going to look like in the garden. And then I tried to get these Black Lime Reserve seeds, but they're all gone. I don't know where, but that was probably the closest pictures I've seen online of something that looked similar. But
yeah, have you seen like the Black Runts at all? Started to pop up kind of. So the black, I've seen some people do. It's like starting to pop up now. Black Runts, and it looks black. I mean, it looks black for sure, but it's like a tint of, it's a very dark shade of purple. But I'd almost be like, it'd be interesting, maybe like breed like something like that with like maybe like a Bubba or something with a ton of orange hair. You know what I'm saying? I mean, something like that. But
yeah, dude. Well, and that green crack, I mean, that's my number 2 seller. And it's an old, like 2015.
Is it really number 2 seller? Wow. I didn't know. That's awesome.
It's crazy. We're really known for the sativas. We're really known for the kind of heirloom. We sell a lot of green weed, and
that's awesome.
When I go to wholesale for other people's brands, they oftentimes are either searching it out or avoiding it. And it's just something where these really, really special strains that have kind of gotten lost in a lot of ways. Like I have an old BC grapefruit that is that legendary, came down from British Columbia. And when I started trimming in the homie's garage in 2008, that's what he was growing. It was that and Candy Kush. And I still have both of them. The grapefruit is
that the grapefruit that Eric had?
Yeah.
Dude, that is like one of my favorite, like from that era of like being up in Bellingham, and like I remember the grapefruit. I love the grape, and the grapefruit did really well, I think, with the drying technology with space weed.
Yeah, it's really interesting because some strains tend to do better with the technology than others, I guess. There's like, it needs to be more finished, and that grapefruit is like a nice 7-week strain, so it's easy to get it before harvesting everything else, but have it look really nice and finished.
Yeah.
And the flavor just came through great in that. Like, I really liked the joints of space weed that he was doing with the straight side tubes. It's nice. Like it's lightweight. I can give it to someone that's in their 50s, and it's not going to put them straight in the couch. And it's so smooth that someone that doesn't smoke regularly isn't going to be hacking their lungs out. Because, if you give someone a joint that has never really smoked cigarettes or smoked weed or smoked hookah, like they're going to be hacking and coughing and probably not have a great experience. But with the space weed tech, it makes it a lot more accessible to a wider audience.
I agree. I think you're right. I think like if you give something like what you're smoking on right there, probably a little earlier, they're going to be way too. I mean, they're going to go to and they're also going to be coughing up and all these things. And I think space weed and the flash frozen cured, technology, it's really great for, I think, new consumers. Honestly, I think that's 100% true. I think that's a really good point. And then, to the strain aspect too, I think the strains are definitely. I think there's certain strains that should definitely not be flash frozen cured, right? And there's some strains that should be, because there's some strains that like the hang dry is way better. Like it's superior for it.
I think as we get deeper into the technology, it's going to be the same way it is with hash. Like some strains taste better as hash than they do as flower. Like whether it's rosin or BHO or just bubble hash, like CO2, you have different terp profiles that handle that type of solvent or the heat from rosin, and 100%. It kind of brings out a different bouquet than just smoking the flower itself. And it'll probably be the exact same with space weed.
I think so. I think with like for example, like I think like the standard Skittles, right? I mean, because or the Z, like that's a great to be turned into live resin or different extractions, right? Because it's got that terpene profile that's just so amazing, but it doesn't necessarily have the best bag appeal when it comes to flower or these other aspects to how people rate cannabis. And I think that's why obviously Skittles and gelato came together to make runs, and that was it's kind of the terp profile with the looks kind of came together. But I think you're right, absolutely, dude. I think there's going to be certain strains that are going to fit the different molds for the different mold that is space weed or flash frozen cured.
I think it's different types of growing too, because I've tried space weed from outdoor. I've tried space weed from greenhouse weed. I've tried space weed from indoor flower, and it all has a little bit different texture and a little bit different look to it. And I mean, what Eric was able to do with the stuff from those greenhouses, I mean, you're not adding any nutrients. You're not really focusing too much on the grow. You're just shoving everything into a giant freezer, and it comes out insane. Like what you're able to do for the side of the industry that's really, really struggling right now, like especially in Washington. You can't sell outdoor in Washington unless you're selling it for like a $50 to $70 ounce. And it would allow them to preserve it in a way that is more true to what it looks like when it's growing in the field, you know, because when you grow outdoor, it looks beautiful while it's growing.
Oh yeah.
And then once it's getting dried and cured is when the color starts to change. And that's just, I think, due to like the UV from the sun is my guess. I don't really know for sure, but I really want to grow a couple plants in my backyard. And I don't think that the neighbors would appreciate it. But for me, growing cannabis, there was a guy that used to work at Amber Brick that was a botanist. And he always said that cannabis is a gateway herb. And I really like that quote because it got me into other types of herbal medicine. But growing cannabis got me more excited to grow different crazy types of tomatoes. And like, I fucking love blueberries, and I got like 3 different strains of blueberry plants right now that I'm just like, this is insane.
Oh, that's awesome.
You know, I got a seed catalog in the mail with all these different types of corn and different like crazy vegetables. And, you know, you open one of those catalogs and they have crazy names too.
Absolutely.
It's the most interesting thing when you're looking at 17 kinds of strawberries to grow, and they all have wild names that are just sucking you in. And I don't think I ever would have got into that if it wasn't for cannabis. Like the ability to kind of, oh, well, you grow that plant that you're passionate about. What other plants can you grow? Oh shit, I can just toss these in my backyard and grow them for free with a sprinkler. Like, why not? Let's give it a try. And
100%. It's such a good, you make such a good point. I think it's also so important nowadays because of, you know, I think we're starting to become more conscious as a society about the different toxins in our food that you know, the different, all these different, you know, over processed foods, all of these different, just overall just poisons in the environment that we are, you know, consuming. And a lot of that's due to, you know, large corporations and stuff. And so it's more important now than ever for people to be self-reliant and to be able to grow their own food. Be able to,
yeah. And when I started learning about pesticide testing, and we used to do a lot of extraction at Cascadia, and it was something where you would concentrate things down to such a level that even if the flower tests clean, maybe it pops for something in the extract. And so we had to go through and test every single thing in the facility because we could not figure out where it was coming from. And it was a product that we were buying for a tea that we were mixing from like a smaller mom and pop's place, and it just worked way better than the other competition. And oh, lo and behold, it works better because you put some illegal shit in it. And so like the idea of pesticide testing really brought me around to like, well, fuck, what are they putting on the food that we eat? And it's like, there's this one that's super famous in the cannabis industry, and it's a joke amongst growers, you know, Eagle 20. Yep, and they're allowed to spray that shit on apples up until the day before harvest.
Wow, what?
Yeah, dude.
And then, and for folks that aren't aware, like what is Eagle 20? Isn't it
microbutanol?
Yeah, and it's pretty much it's like a cousin of like one of the really bad toxins.
Yeah, like it can cause birth defects. It can cause like issues with your body's electrical system, and
there's so many nasty stuff it can do. Yeah,
dude. Yeah, so I think that like I will not buy strawberries from the store anymore. Like it's just something where once my eyes got open to pesticides and pesticide testing and what that was, I was just like, dude, holy shit, I can't believe how many pesticides I've consumed, just not even thinking about groceries, just on weed from California in the 2000s and 2010s. It's like the people don't know how good they got it now that all their shit's tested. Like even, you know, you look in and it's like powdery mildew and mold and just all the gnarly stuff that came with the black market. And I think that the support of everyone that buys from the dispensaries and helps people like us, and it's something where you're getting the entire industry to move in a healthier way. Like I think that even home growers, where they used to be only concerned about oh, well, I'm going to sell it. Who fucking cares what we put on it? No one's watching. And now they're much more interested in the health side of it, because, you know, I think the old assumption used to be if you can buy it in the garden shop, it's probably fine. And now it's much more of like, we can't use anything that's not approved by the Department of Ag for our specific crop. And so going into the WSU database and being able to kind of look through these things, look at the active ingredients, go to the Google paper search and look at research that's been done on them, and it's fascinating, dude. But
absolutely, no, 100%. Yeah, the different. I've been at different grows over on the east side and stuff, and I've been at multiple grows, and there'll be like these massive, like, you know, different orchards next door, and they'll be like, anyway, it was the Wazoo actually doing like a test on multiple different agriculture stuff. So that's dope. I want to turn though real quick. So I want to turn to HoneyDew. So let's talk about HoneyDew. Let's talk about, you know, and then kind of your grow style. How much time do you got, by the way? You got like another 15
I've got until about 12:30. So about another hour and a half if we need it.
Yeah. So yeah, let's do like, we'll probably do another 30-ish plus minutes maybe.
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, let's dive into HoneyDew. So I've been to your facility a few different times. Looks dope. Flower is amazing. How did HoneyDew come to be? And then let's then jump into like maybe the different what's your grow style?
Yeah, so HoneyDew came to be through the previous owners, Scott and Heidi, who are my landlords now. Back in the day, my LCB agent called me and said, hey, there's these really nice people, but they need a lot of help with their compliance. Is it okay if I give them your number? And I was like, sure, man. And
he or she did that because you had a good relationship with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of little callback to what you said earlier, because that's like a modern technique. Like anybody that like, you definitely want to have a great relationship with your regulators. But sorry, keep going though. Yeah.
I mean, my old LCB officer was an awesome dude, and so he introduced us. I went and met him, and they were really, really awesome people. They are really awesome people, and so I did a bunch of pro bono work for them, got them all set up, squared away so they could pass their inspections, and just stayed in touch with them over the next few years. And I guess about 5 years later, they hit me up and said, hey, our son's 14 now, and it hasn't really worked out how we were hoping it would, and we're wanting to go do something else with our lives. And, we'd love to see it go to someone that we like instead of Weed Megacorp. And do you want to come take a look at it? And I was like, sure. So I went out there and checked it out, and it was, this was in December in 2020, and it was 40 degrees in the building. They had no heat. They had no plants that were alive anymore. It was empty, but the facility had really good bones, and I was coming from Cascadia. That was a full 10,000 feet. We did a couple 100 pounds a month, and this facility is 4,000 square feet. So significantly smaller. And they were able to put me on a payment plan for the license and the equipment, and we paid that off in 3 years. And I was able to find a silent investor through some family and someone that had been like badgering my mom for years as far as like, oh, does he need any, does he want to expand? Or and I was just like, no, I'm not ready for this. I'm happy with where I'm at. And when this opportunity came through, I just couldn't. It was undeniable, and I was able to pull it together. And we started in 2021. I signed the paperwork on my birthday in January 2021.
Wow. That's awesome.
So yeah, it was crazy. I had a buddy that was going to be the main grower, and I was going to build the business and help him in the grow. And the whole plan was to sell it all to Cascadia because we needed way more weed at the time. So there was no even thought of having a retail brand. But maybe 6 months in, the grower quit. He had committed to 2 years, and my buddy, he quit. He was just like, dude, I can't do this. This is way too stressful. It's too much. It's like, I'm out. And I was like, okay, shit, what do I do now? I can't do everything. And that was when I really started taking on the grow. And it was, at Cascadia, my responsibilities were not in the grow. This was the first time that the grow was on me. And it was very much trial by fire. Like, there was no room for a failed crop. There was no room for anything like that. And I went from not watering at all for years to watering every day, mixing feeds every day, in a totally new facility with new environmental issues to plan out and figure out. And at that same time, like, Cascadia was really struggling with a couple of new owners and old owners and issues, and it was just going down the tube. So we weren't able to buy anything from HoneyDew over there. And by like December, I was, hadn't taken any money from the company yet. So it'd been like about a year without taking a dime. I'm getting tapped out. I've like begging people for wholesale and just pulling, like, the homies just carried me at that point. Like, the ability to hit up other processors and producers in Washington that I'd known for years at that point, and be like, bro, like, I'm gonna lose my shit. Like, can you come take a look at some weed and maybe buy some wholesale? And I think that was one of the most difficult times. And in January, I was like, we have to do retail. That's the only way through this, is to get some stores, because at that point in the market, it was the end of COVID. So during COVID, everyone expanded because everyone was at home. You couldn't go out to restaurants in Washington. You couldn't, like, there was no concerts to spend money on. All of your kids were doing work from home, and they didn't have any activities that you weren't spending money on. Football gear, you weren't spending money on hockey gear. Like,
but you could
everyone had extra money, and they were all stuck at home or doing road trips. So the weed industry was popping. Like, we were classified as essential, and we were as essential could get. Everyone was like, yes. So everybody that I know in the industry added more growing capacity. And by the time we got to the end of 21, started 22, and then all through 22, and it was hard. Like, when I started in 2015, there was 1,250 grow licenses. And by the end of 2022, we were down below 700. And so we started our retail brand at the start of that downturn. and like, I had friends that were like, dude, you're starting to retail right now? Are you crazy? And I'm like, dude, that's my only way. Yeah. No one is buying wholesale right now because their retail is suffering as well. So we started 2022 doing retail. I think we handed out the first samples in like probably mid-March or something like that. And by the end of 2022, we had about 30 retailers that were buying pretty regularly. And again, like, getting into the retail, getting those first few retailers to give you a shot, you show up with a jar with a brand on it. And like, at the time, I said I was struggling so hard that I didn't have money for graphics design. I didn't have money to get a label. And I had started a little, like a CBD tincture because my ex's dog needed it. And I had worked with Keegs at Cascadia and knew a decent amount about extraction and processing into things like that. So I took MCT oil and added CBD isolate and whipped up a tincture for this dog. And the dog